The intriguing arrival. Alex stood in front of the towering apartment building, holding a single suitcase. The city around him buzzed with unfamiliar sounds and sights. Neon signs written in alien languages flickered overhead, and creatures of all shapes and sizes moved past him, each going about their day. This was not Earth. This was New Area, a planet known for its diverse population and unique customs. Alex had moved here for a job opportunity, but little did he know, his life was about to take a very unexpected turn. The apartment building was old but sturdy, its metallic walls reflecting the soft glow of the city lights. Alex double-checked the address on the small piece of paper in his hand. Room 312. He took a deep breath and walked inside, the automatic doors hissing open to reveal a small lobby. A tall, insect-like alien at the reception desk barely glanced at him before motioning toward the elevator. When Alex reached the door to his new apartment, he paused. This was his first time living with someone who wasn't human. His company had arranged the housing to save costs, pairing employees with local roommates. He had been told his roommate was friendly, but not much else. With a mixture of curiosity and nervousness, Alex knocked on the door. The door slid open with a soft whoosh, and Alex found himself face to face with Saria, his new roommate. She was unlike anything he had imagined. Her skin shimmered like the surface of a lake under the moonlight, a faint glow pulsing beneath it. Her eyes were large and bright, like twin orbs of blue light, and her hair seemed to flow like silk, though it defied gravity ever so slightly. "Ah, you must be Alex," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "I'm Saria. Welcome to our home." Alex nodded, trying to mask his awe. "Thanks. Nice to meet you." Saria stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. The apartment was modest but clean. The living room had a small couch, a table, and a strange-looking plant that seemed to hum faintly. The kitchen was compact, with strange devices Alex didn't recognize. The air smelled faintly sweet, like flowers mixed with something metallic. "You'll be staying in the room on the left," Saria said, pointing. "I've already set up some basic necessities for you." Alex set his suitcase down in his room. It was simple but cozy, with a small bed and a desk. He unpacked quickly, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. When he returned to the living room, Saria was sitting on the couch, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "First time living with someone who isn't human?" she asked, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Is it that obvious?" Alex replied, scratching the back of his neck. "Don't worry," Saria said. "It's my first time living with a human, too. I think we'll figure it out." Over the next few hours, they talked. Alex learned that Saria was a healer, working at a nearby clinic. Her people, the Avenari, had a strong connection to energy and emotions, something Alex found fascinating but hard to fully understand. Saria, in turn, asked Alex about Earth, its people, and its strange customs. They laughed as Alex tried to explain the concept of pizza, something Saria couldn't quite wrap her head around. As the evening wore on, Alex began to notice something odd. Saria seemed to wince slightly when she moved, her glow dimming ever so often. He tried not to stare, but it was hard to ignore. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. Saria hesitated, her glowing eyes flickering like dying stars. "It's nothing serious," she said, brushing it off. "Just a condition my people deal with sometimes." Alex wasn't convinced, but he decided not to press further. He barely knew her, after all. Still, the image of her subtle pain lingered in his mind as he got ready for bed. Later that night, as Alex lay on his unfamiliar mattress, he couldn't sleep. The city outside was alive with distant sounds, and his mind kept replaying the moment Saria had winced. Something about it bothered him. Why hadn't she explained more? Was it just a cultural difference, or was she hiding something? Meanwhile, in the next room, Saria sat on her bed, clutching a small crystal that pulsed faintly in her hands. She closed her eyes, her glow dimmer than usual. Pain rippled through her body, but she refused to let it show. She didn't want to alarm Alex. He wouldn't understand, not yet anyway. For her, this was a delicate balance. Her condition was worsening, and the solution was one she doubted Alex would agree to. But she had no choice. If the pain grew any worse, she would have to tell him the truth. As the hours passed, Alex's curiosity grew, and so did Saria's struggle. Neither of them knew that the events of the coming days would change both of their lives forever. The unexpected request. The morning sunlight filtered through the apartment's translucent curtains, casting soft patterns on the metallic walls. Alex was in the kitchen, fumbling with a strange alien contraption that was supposed to make coffee. After a few failed attempts, he sighed and reached for a pack of instant coffee from Earth that he had brought along. As the aroma filled the air, he heard light footsteps behind him. "Morning," Saria said, her voice softer than usual. Her glow seemed dimmer, and her usual energy was absent. "Morning," Alex replied, handing her a steaming cup. "I figured coffee might not be your thing, but you're welcome to try." She accepted the cup hesitantly, taking a small sip, her expression twisted in confusion. "It's bitter, but it has an odd warmth. I can see why humans like it." Alex chuckled. "Yeah, it grows on you." Saria set the cup down and hesitated. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully, her glowing eyes flickering slightly. "Alex, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's personal." Alex straightened, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Is everything okay?" Saria took a deep breath, her glow dimming even further. "Not really. My condition, it's getting worse. I've tried to hide it, but I can't anymore." Alex frowned. "What kind of condition are we talking about? Can't you just see a doctor? You said you work at a clinic, right?" Saria shook her head. "It's not something your medicine, or even ours, can easily fix. It's tied to my species' energy. When we're disconnected from others emotionally, it starts to affect us physically. Pain, weakness, even glowing less, it's all part of the same thing." Alex furrowed his brow, trying to process what she was saying. "Disconnected? You mean, like loneliness?" "In a way, yes," Saria said, her voice almost a whisper. "But it's more than that. We Avenari need close emotional bonds to sustain ourselves. And sometimes, physical closeness too." The room fell silent, the hum of the alien appliances the only sound. Alex stared at her, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Wait, are you saying?" Saria's cheeks flushed with a faint lavender hue, her version of a blush. "I need to share a sleeping space with someone. It's the most effective way to stabilize my energy. It doesn't have to mean anything more than that. It's just how we heal." Alex blinked, caught completely off guard. Of all the things he had expected from his new roommate, this wasn't on the list. "You're serious?" "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary," Saria said quickly, her voice laced with urgency. "I've tried every other method I can think of, meditations, crystal treatments, even energy supplements. Nothing has worked. If I don't do this, my condition will worsen." Alex rubbed the back of his neck, his thoughts racing. The idea of sharing a bed with an alien, one he barely knew, felt strange, to say the least. Yet, as he looked at Saria, her glow so faint it was almost gone, he realized this wasn't just an unusual request. It was a plea for help. "I don't know," Alex said finally, his voice hesitant. "This is a lot to take in." "I understand," Saria said, her shoulders slumping. "I wouldn't blame you if you said no. It's not a human custom, and it must sound bizarre to you. But," she trailed off, her voice trembling slightly, "if you don't, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep functioning." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Alex felt torn. On one hand, this was far outside his comfort zone. On the other hand, Saria didn't look like she was exaggerating. Her glow was dim, her movements slower, her voice weaker. Whatever this condition was, it was real. "I'll think about it," Alex said cautiously. "Give me some time to process this." Saria nodded, her expression a mix of hope and resignation. "Thank you. That's all I can ask." As Alex retreated to his room, his mind churned with questions. Could he really do this? Could he share such an intimate space with someone he barely knew? And even if he agreed, would it even work? Yet, despite his doubts, one thought kept nagging at him. If he didn't help, Saria might not survive. That night, as Alex lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. Her faint voice echoed in his mind. "I'm not sure how much longer I can keep functioning." The decision was his to make, but deep down, Alex knew there was only one answer. The awkward first night. Alex stood outside Saria's door, his heart pounding in his chest. The soft glow from underneath the door reminded him of just how alien she truly was. He clutched a spare blanket, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and disbelief. "This is insane," he thought. "Sharing a bed with someone I've barely met. An alien, no less." But the memory of Saria's faint, trembling voice convinced him to take the step. He knocked softly. The door slid open almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for him. Saria stood there, her glow slightly brighter than it had been earlier that day, though still dim. She offered him a small smile, but her nervous energy was unmistakable. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said softly, stepping aside to let him in. Her room was dimly lit, the walls adorned with faintly glowing crystals. It was tidy but minimalist, with only a bed and a small table. The air felt warmer here, almost comforting, but it carried an unfamiliar hum, like a faint, vibrating energy. "Yeah, well," Alex muttered, shifting awkwardly. "It's not exactly how I imagined my first alien roommate experience would go." Saria chuckled softly, her voice carrying an almost musical quality. "I understand. It's not how I imagined it either." The bed wasn't particularly large, and the realization hit Alex like a brick. He was about to share this small space with someone whose culture, biology, and customs were completely different from his own. He hesitated, hovering near the edge of the bed. "Are you sure this is safe?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "I mean, I don't want to accidentally do something offensive or, I don't know, toxic." Saria's cheeks flushed with a soft lavender glow, a gesture Alex had come to recognize as embarrassment. "It's safe. My people's energy fields are designed to harmonize with others, even those of different species. As long as you're willing to be here, it'll work." He nodded slowly and sat down on the bed, the mattress softer than he expected. Saria climbed in on the other side, keeping a respectable distance between them. The faint hum in the room grew slightly louder as she settled in, her glow pulsing rhythmically. They lay there in silence for a few minutes, neither of them sure what to say. Alex stared at the ceiling, acutely aware of how close she was. Every small movement she made sent a ripple through the bed, and he couldn't shake the feeling of her presence. "This is weird," Alex finally admitted, breaking the silence. Saria laughed softly. "For me too. But it's already helping. I can feel the energy starting to balance." "Really?" Alex turned his head to look at her. Her glow seemed steadier now, more vibrant, though still far from what he assumed was normal. "It's that fast." "It's not instant," she explained, her voice gentle. "But just being near someone who cares, who's willing to help, makes a difference." Alex felt a pang of guilt at her words. He had been so focused on how strange this was for him that he hadn't considered how vulnerable she must have felt asking for his help. She was relying on him in a way that few humans ever had to rely on each other. "I guess this isn't exactly easy for you either," he said quietly. "It's not," Saria admitted, her glowing eyes meeting his. "But you've been kind, even when you didn't have to be. That means more than you know." The room fell into a more comfortable silence. Alex found himself relaxing slightly, the initial awkwardness beginning to fade. The rhythmic pulse of her glow and the soft hum of the crystals created an almost hypnotic atmosphere. Before long, he felt his eyelids grow heavy. Just as he was about to drift off, Saria spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Alex, for doing this." He opened one eye, giving her a lopsided smile. "Don't mention it. Just don't snore, okay?" Saria laughed, a light, tinkling sound that filled the room with warmth. "I'll try my best." As Alex finally succumbed to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was the start of something far bigger than he could imagine. Beside him, Saria's glow pulsed brighter, her energy stabilizing for the first time in days. The awkwardness of the moment faded, replaced by a fragile but growing bond that neither of them fully understood yet. Secrets of the alien bond. The following morning, Alex woke up to a faint warmth radiating through the room. At first he couldn't place the sensation, but then he remembered the events of the previous night. He turned his head slightly and saw Saria sitting cross-legged on the floor, her glow brighter than he had ever seen before. She was holding a small, pulsating crystal in her hands, her eyes closed in deep concentration. "Morning," Alex said groggily, sitting up. His voice startled her, and she looked up quickly, her glow flickering momentarily. "Good morning," she replied with a shy smile. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," Alex assured her, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "How are you feeling?" Saria's glow steadied as she placed the crystal down on the table. "Better. Much better, actually. The energy transfer last night helped stabilize me more than I expected." "Energy transfer?" Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought we were just sharing space." Saria hesitated, as if debating how much to say. Finally, she gestured for him to sit with her. "There's something I need to explain. About my species and why this bond is so important." Alex joined her on the floor, his curiosity piqued. "Okay, I'm listening." Saria picked up the crystal again, letting its soft light illuminate her translucent fingers. "The Avenari are deeply connected to energy, our own and others. It's not just a physical thing. It's emotional, spiritual. When we're around someone we trust, their energy blends with ours, creating a balance that keeps us healthy." "So it's like emotional fuel?" Alex asked, trying to wrap his head around the concept. "Sort of," Saria said, nodding. "But it's more complex than that. It's not just about proximity, it's about intent. If someone is near me but harbors resentment or fear, it disrupts the energy flow. But when someone is kind, when they genuinely care, the bond strengthens and healing happens." Alex leaned back against the bedframe, processing her words. "And that's why you asked me to share a bed with you?" "Yes," Saria admitted, her glow dimming slightly in what Alex recognized as embarrassment. "It's the most direct way to harmonize energy. When we're vulnerable, when we trust someone completely, the bond becomes stronger." Alex nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "But why me? I mean, we barely know each other." Saria's eyes flickered, her glow shifting between shades. "Because you've been kind since the moment you arrived. You didn't judge me for my condition or my customs. You didn't mock me or push me away, even when I made such an unusual request. That kind of kindness, it's rare." Alex felt a twinge of guilt. He hadn't thought of himself as particularly kind. He had just done what felt right. "I guess I just figured you needed help," he said awkwardly. And it didn't seem fair to ignore that. Saria smiled softly, her glow brightening again. "That's exactly why I chose you." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence filled with the faint hum of the crystal. Then Alex asked the question that had been nagging at him. "What happens if the bond breaks? If, for some reason, I can't help anymore?" Saria's glow dimmed, and she looked away. "If the bond breaks, the imbalance returns. The pain, the weakness, it all comes back." And eventually, it becomes irreversible. The weight of her words settled over Alex like a heavy blanket. He hadn't realized just how much responsibility he had taken on by agreeing to help her. "That's a lot," he admitted. "Doesn't that make you afraid, depending on someone like this?" Saria met his gaze, her glowing eyes steady. "Of course it does, but fear doesn't change the fact that I need help. And sometimes, you just have to trust that the person you've chosen won't let you down." Alex stared at her, seeing a mixture of vulnerability and strength in her expression. It was a strange feeling, being trusted so deeply by someone he barely knew, someone who wasn't even human. But as he sat there, he realized that her trust wasn't misplaced. He didn't fully understand why, but he wanted to help her. He wanted her to be okay. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm. "I'm in. We'll figure this out together." Saria's smile widened, her glow radiating a warmth that filled the room. "Thank you, Alex. I won't forget this." As they sat there, the bond between them began to deepen, not just in the mysterious energy Saria spoke of, but in a mutual understanding that transcended species. For the first time since arriving on New Area, Alex felt like he wasn't just a stranger in a strange land. He was part of something bigger, something meaningful. And despite the challenges ahead, he was ready to face them. An unexpected crisis. The apartment was unusually quiet that evening. Alex sat on the couch, flipping through an alien news feed on his tablet, trying to make sense of the swirling symbols and occasional translated phrases. Saria hadn't left her room all day, which wasn't like her. Normally, she'd be humming softly to herself or tending to her glowing plants. Something felt off. Curiosity gave way to concern when he noticed that the faint glow of light, usually coming from under her door, was gone. He knocked gently. "Saria, you okay in there?" There was no response. Alex's chest tightened. He knocked again, louder this time. "Saria." Still nothing. Panic began to set in. He pushed the door open, his heart pounding. The room was dim, the crystals on her walls barely glowing. Saria was curled up on the bed, her body motionless, her glow almost completely gone. Her once vivid eyes were dull, and her breathing was shallow. "Saria." Alex rushed to her side, his voice trembling. "Hey, what's going on? Talk to me." She stirred faintly, her lips moving, but no sound came out. Alex leaned closer, catching fragments of her whispered words. "It's too much imbalance." "What does that mean?" Alex asked, his voice rising with desperation. He didn't understand what was happening, and the helplessness was suffocating. "What can I do?" Saria's weak hand reached for a small crystal on her bedside table, but her fingers trembled too much to grasp it. Alex grabbed it for her, holding it close. The crystal flickered faintly, but nothing happened. "It's not enough," Saria whispered, her voice barely audible. "The bond. It's breaking." Alex froze, her earlier words echoing in his mind. If the bond breaks, the imbalance returns. The pain, the weakness, it all comes back. And eventually, it becomes irreversible. He had promised to help her, to make sure she would be okay. But now it felt like he was failing. "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "I'm not letting that happen." He sat on the edge of the bed, hesitating for only a moment before pulling her into his arms. Her body was cold, her glow flickering weakly against his skin. He didn't know if this would work, but he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. "It's going to be okay," Alex said softly, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm here. You're not alone." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, he felt a faint warmth spreading from her, like the first rays of sunlight after a long night. Her glow began to pulse faintly, matching the rhythm of her shallow breaths. Saria's voice trembled as she spoke. "Your energy, it's stabilizing me. Don't stop." Alex tightened his hold, focusing all his thoughts on her. He thought of the moments they had shared, the trust she had shown him, the vulnerability she had revealed, and the strength she had tried to hide. He thought of how far they had come in such a short time and how much he wanted her to be okay. The crystals in the room began to hum softly, their light growing brighter. Saria's glow pulsed stronger, the faint lavender tint returning to her cheeks. Her breathing steadied, and her eyes fluttered open, meeting Alex's with a faint but grateful smile. You did it," she whispered, her voice still weak but steady. "You saved me." Alex exhaled a shaky breath, the tension in his chest finally easing. "I thought I lost you there for a second," he admitted, his voice cracking. Saria's hand rested lightly on his arm, her glow brighter than it had been in days. "You didn't. You held on, even when I thought it was too late. Thank you." For a long moment, they stayed like that, the silence filled with the gentle hum of energy around them. Alex realized just how much he had come to care for her, not just as a roommate, but as someone who had become a part of his life. He didn't fully understand the bond they shared, but he knew it was something special, something worth fighting for. As Saria regained her strength, her glow lighting up the room once more, Alex made a silent promise to himself. He wouldn't let her face this alone again. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The turning point. Alex sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the steaming cup of coffee in his hands. The events of the previous night still lingered in his mind. Saria's fading glow, her near collapse, and the overwhelming feeling of helplessness. He'd managed to stabilize her energy somehow, but the experience left him shaken. This wasn't just an unusual living arrangement anymore. It was something far deeper. Saria's life was tethered to his, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for the weight of that responsibility. A soft hum broke the silence. Alex turned to see Saria standing in the doorway, her glow brighter than he had seen it in days. She looked hesitant, her hands clasped in front of her, as if unsure whether to speak. "Morning," Alex said, his voice a little hoarse. "Feeling better?" Saria nodded, stepping into the room. "Much better, thanks to you." He gave her a faint smile. "I'm glad. But we need to talk about what happened last night." Saria's glow dimmed slightly as she sat across from him. "I know. It was worse than I let on, and I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to scare you." "Well, mission failed," Alex said with a dry laugh, though there was no malice in his tone. "I was terrified. I thought I was losing you." Saria lowered her gaze, her voice soft. "You almost did. The imbalance was stronger than I expected. If you hadn't acted when you did." She trailed off, her glowing eyes flickering with emotion. "You saved my life, Alex. I can never thank you enough for that." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Saria, I need to understand. Is this going to happen again? Is this something we're going to face every day?" She hesitated before nodding slowly. "The bond is like a flame. It needs to be nurtured to stay strong. Last night was a wake-up call for me, too. I need to be honest about my condition and what it means." "So tell me," Alex said firmly. "I'm here, and I want to help. But I can't do that if I don't know what I'm dealing with." Saria took a deep breath, her glow steadying as she began to explain. "The bond between us isn't just about proximity or kindness. It's about trust, vulnerability, and shared emotions. It's not one-sided, Alex. You're giving me your energy, but I'm also sharing mine with you. That connection grows stronger the more we open up to each other." Alex frowned, trying to process her words. "So it's like emotional honesty fuels the bond." "Yes," Saria said with a small smile. "Exactly. But it's not just about me. If you close yourself off or hold back, it weakens the bond for both of us." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "So what you're saying is, if I don't fully commit to this, it could hurt you, and me too." Saria nodded, her expression earnest. "I know it's a lot to ask, and I wouldn't blame you if you decided this was too much. But if we're going to make this work, we have to trust each other completely." Alex stared at her for a long moment, the weight of her words settling over him. He had never been one to open up easily, even with humans. Now he was being asked to bear his emotions to someone from an entirely different species. But when he looked at Saria, her glowing eyes filled with both hope and fear, he realized something. She wasn't asking for perfection. She was asking for honesty. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'm in. No more half measures. If this bond is what you need to survive, then I'll do whatever it takes." Saria's glow brightened, her smile wide and genuine. "Thank you, Alex. You don't know how much that means to me." As they sat there, a newfound determination settled between them. The bond they shared was no longer just a survival mechanism. It was something they both chose to nurture. For the first time, Alex felt like he truly understood what Saria had been trying to tell him all along. This wasn't just about saving her. It was about saving each other. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test that bond in ways neither of them could have imagined. But for now, they had taken the first step towards something stronger than either of them had thought possible. A new understanding. The glow from Saria's crystals bathed the apartment in soft, pulsing light as Alex stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling alien city. The events of the past days felt like a whirlwind, a crash course in trust, vulnerability, and an otherworldly bond he hadn't even known was possible. He turned his head slightly, catching a glimpse of Saria sitting cross-legged on the couch, her glow steady and vibrant for the first time since he had arrived. "Feeling better?" he asked, breaking the comfortable silence. She looked up and smiled, her glow brightening in response. "Much better. Thanks to you." Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "I don't think I've ever been thanked this much in my life." "You've earned it," Saria said warmly. "Most people wouldn't have done what you did. They would have walked away, found it too strange, or just not cared." He crossed the room and sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "I'll admit it was strange. Still is, honestly. But I guess I've learned that not everything needs to make sense right away." Saria's smile softened as she leaned forward slightly. "You've changed too, you know." "Me?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "How so?" She gestured toward him, her glowing fingers tracing the air as if outlining him. "When you first got here, your energy was closed off, like a wall. I could feel your hesitation, your doubt. But now, it's different. Open, steady. You've allowed yourself to connect in ways I didn't expect." Alex shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe I just needed a good alien roommate to teach me how to loosen up." They both laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth. But as the laughter faded, Alex's expression turned serious. "You know, this bond thing, it's not just about helping you anymore. I think it's helping me too." Saria tilted her head, her glowing eyes curious. "How so?" "I don't know," he admitted, searching for the right words. "It's like being around you, learning to trust someone so completely. It's forced me to look at myself differently. Back on Earth, I wasn't exactly great at opening up. But here, with you, it's different. I'm different." Saria's glow brightened, a reflection of the emotion she couldn't hide. "That's the beauty of the bond, Alex. It's not just about giving or receiving. It's about growth. Together." He nodded slowly, her words resonating with him. For the first time, he truly understood what she had been trying to tell him from the start. The bond wasn't just about survival. It was about connection, about two beings from completely different worlds finding common ground and helping each other thrive. "So, where do we go from here?" Alex asked, leaning back with a curious smile. "Do we just keep sharing energy, saving each other from collapse?" Saria laughed, the sound light and joyful. "Something like that. But it's not just about survival anymore. It's about living, sharing experiences, learning from each other, and maybe even finding joy in the little things." Alex smirked, like introducing you to better coffee. Her glowing cheeks flushed lavender as she made a face. That might take some time. They both laughed again, the tension of the past days finally melting away. In that moment, Alex realized that this wasn't just a temporary arrangement. This was the start of something deeper, something that transcended species, customs, and even logic. As the city outside buzzed with life, Alex and Surya sat together, their bond stronger than ever. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building a life, one step at a time, in a world that had once felt so foreign to him. And for the first time since arriving on New Area, Alex didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged.